Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of Cooker in the Sun podcast. I'm very grateful and happy to be here today. And today we're going to continue with the Magdalene Manuscript and the Alchemies of Horus and the Sex Magic of Isis. We continue with Judy Science' story, her own personal story, um, and how she evolves. So I think today I just want to really express how grateful I am to have this podcast. I feel like this podcast helps to ground me. It gives me um also like the shape of a schedule that I would enjoy, the freedom that I would enjoy doing something I love in the time that I like doing it, that doesn't feel overwhelming. So it's really me experimenting with what feels right to me and integrating or in relationship with discovering myself, um, and the things I enjoy. So I enjoy conversation and talking and sharing and learning new insights. Um, so this podcast allows me to do it, but I also like doing things when I want to do it without feeling um you know I don't want to say enslaved to it, but without feeling like, oh, I have to do it. I want it to feel like, oh, I love doing this. And so the podcast allows for that to occur. I don't feel trapped in a schedule per se, because I do it most times at the time that I want to do it and I post it. And I think, but it also gives me purpose so that my days don't feel like they're floating away. It feels like, oh, I have something planned to do, even though it's not really planned. I don't know. It's like the perfect combination of all those things that bring me the most joy. The only thing I would like for is more interviews of people to conversate with. That would be great. I feel like it's just me talking to myself. But I mean, that's good too, because I get to see my own progress over time and where my mind was and the things that I learned. So the podcast also is like an audio diary or visual diary, depending on which way I look at it. If I look at it on YouTube, if I look at it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, um, that allows me to see my progress and where I am and where I came from with all these thoughts. So very grateful for anyone that listens to it, and just grateful to the apps that are resources that I can use to do it, to post it. So grateful for Spotify podcasts, grateful for YouTube, grateful for Apple Podcasts, grateful for my internet, for the books, for the content, for the thoughts, for the insights. I'm just grateful for it all, for the time to do it. Yeah. So, and then I wanted to say, like, just an overall short, simplistic way. I'm still in my own process. And I think that's a lifelong journey, but I don't like overwhelming things. I like things to be as simple as possible so everyone can understand it. Of course, you can expound on it and expand on it in your own way. But for me, simplicity is key. So the first thing I want to say that is pivotal, important, significant to my own journey is self-love and honoring my feelings, my thoughts, my body, how it feels, what it's telling me. And then looking at what all those things are are trying to communicate to me, and not dismissing them, ignoring them, suppressing them, but bringing them into awareness and looking at it and how to relieve it, transmute it, love it, take the wisdom from it, leave the trauma of it, all these things. So that's like self-love is key. An important aspect of this is following my heart's joys. I think joy is key to my journey. I don't like doing things because I have to. I like doing things because I enjoy doing it. And if there's something I enjoy doing every day, like looking at the sunset, then it's more of a joyful thing than a practice for an outcome. But sometimes there's no outcome, but I just enjoy the beauty of the sunset. And some days I get understandings and insights while looking at it. But some days I get understandings and insights the different times of the day. Like I said, in the shower is a good time. In my sleep break time. I've been doing a lot of focusing on things that I love and deep breathing. And I wouldn't say breath work, but enjoying the breath and the taste of the air. You know, air has a taste, it has flavor. More and more, and being aware of it, being conscious of it. And then having that connection and allowance for information or guidance to come in. I think for me, I enjoy gentle integration, and I'm very grateful that my integration has been gentle. My insights have been beautiful, loving. They have been. Sometimes I do think the energies can feel intense, and I have had experiences where I found the energy was intense. You know, sometimes you feel tired, everything feels like molasses, or you might have like mild headaches, or anxious feelings that you don't even know what you're anxious about. So when that occurs, that does happen, and I think it happens based on the energies we're getting from the solar system. And I think when that occurs for me, what I do is I ask for assistance from my angels and guides to send to me to help me maintain my calm and my peace and my wellness, to ground me. And it works essentially. I find they respond really quickly. I just feel a lot calmer and a lot more stable when that happens. Sometimes for the headaches, it'll get a little less, but I have no problems taking ibuprofen or Aleve if it's not being relieved when that happens. So self-love, honoring your feelings and looking at them, loving yourself, even the parts of yourself that you don't think are worth loving them, looking at it from an objective view based on your historical experience and what you learn from others, your defense mechanisms, and loving yourself through that and allowing that to transmute to love, to go back to love. So loving yourself, following your heart's joys. I like slow and gentle integration. There are energies that I think we do get from the solar system that can also affect our progress. When those get to be intense, asking for help from guides and angels. I have experienced, so I don't tend to ask for acceleration of my own evolution without saying I, that's best for me, or that's gentle for me, or that's the best pace for me. I know there is this push to accelerate things. And if I do ask for an acceleration, say my healing, I will say at the best pace for me and the way that is most enjoyable for me and the way that's most loving to me. An acceleration in my healing in the gentlest way for me that doesn't overwhelm me. I always put a caveat there because I don't want to overwhelm myself and end up in an unbalanced way. I like feeling balanced. But again, sometimes there are times when the energies, I think, so that we get from the solar system or what's out there, the lights and all that, that can affect how balanced we feel. And at those times, I do ask for help from my guides and angels. And I also do things that are grounding here to earth, such as I really like food. So I might cook something heavy. I find that that helps. People have different ways to ground. Going for walks. I love going for walks, especially if there's like a lake or water resource there. Connecting with the animals, the birds, my dog, um, talking with friends. For me, grounding is things that I love doing on earth. Those are things that I do. Would be movies. It could be stupid movies, comedy movies, but things that I enjoy doing on earth, right? So that is, yeah, we are. I feel like we are affected by those energies because I remember feeling unsettled or spacey with the eclipse that we had in April, I believe. Um, Even today it felt like there was a second of intense anxiety. And then, of course, I asked for help with feeling calm and grounded and stable and loved and peaceful and well and balanced and and the assistance came. I just felt a lot calmer and um probably gonna cook something to eat here. And then I'm so grateful for the friends that I have and the different things that I enjoy interacting with them with. So everybody's not the same. And so I don't have a ton of friends, but I have a few. And those few friends, I feel like I am accepted as myself fully. And they all have different aspects of being human that I enjoy, right? So I have one I can talk about spiritual stuff about, and I don't have to feel judged or anything like that. I have one I can talk about some spiritual stuff about. She has a somewhat of an understanding, but she is very action oriented and she is loving life. Okay, she is living life and loving life um in this physical world, and life is loving her back. And so our conversation somewhat stem on some spiritual aspect. Like we would say, oh girl, I had a dream last night, but also it talks about places we want to travel and what we saw somewhere on the internet. Did you see this new development? That kind of thing. So she's like that. And then I have another one. She's not esoteric at all. Um, but we can talk about restaurants and the nursing field and what's going on in our lives, what's going on in our families, any updates, stuff like that. And I'm so grateful for her too. So talking with friends also helps to ground me. I'm just so grateful for them. I'm just so grateful for them. And anyone else that I am able to have a relationship with that allows me to be myself and not conform, um, and find aspects of life that I can enjoy with them with. Um, it may not be all my aspects. It may not be all my aspects, but those aspects aren't hidden per se. It's just we don't have the same ideals there, but we can find common ground without having to disagree with different ways of living life. We can say, okay, well, this way works for you and this way works for me. But what about this? What's going on with this aspect, right? And find common ground there. Now, these may not be people I talk to very often, but I am grateful that there is a respect and a want to still have relationship with me and communication with me in a way that does not allow or make me conform or feel small. They're like, okay, I see where you are there, and I can say I see where you are there. And though that's not for my life, I can understand that being for your life. So that's the other thing. Grateful for the relationships I have. And those that helps ground me. Like today, I'm gonna really watch a good movie, eat some good food, maybe call a friend. I want to feel grounded here to earth and the deliciousness of being here on earth today. Yeah, so I want to be grounded here because it feels like the energy. I don't know. I think we got some kind of storm. I have not followed the Schumann resonance. Recently, I am in a stage where I don't really I want to feel my experiences on my own without looking up what other people have to say with the energies that are incoming and what's upgrading and what's not upgrading and where we're moving and what we're not moving to. Sometimes I like to listen to those things to get some insight, but I find that the last 2 weeks or so, I really like paying attention to my own journey and what it's revealing to me without the influence of others. So I can, I think, probably develop my own relationship with my own journey a little more intimately. I don't think this will always be. I think once I achieve whatever I'm supposed to be achieving here, because I know the journey to be what it is, and I really follow what feels good to me, what feels right to me. I feel like once this aspect is done and I have achieved whatever knowing of myself and my own connection with what's for me and what's not for me and where I am and what's happening in my life and my own insights, once I get a handle on paying attention to those subtleties and recognizing them, I will probably be open again to hearing what other people have to say and then seeing if I'm there too, if I'm not there too, or because everybody's at different stages. So it's not a one for all. So yeah, so that's where I am right now. I'm really paying attention to my own subtleties, my own inner guidance, my thoughts on where I am and how this is progressing and how it's moving forward. So So yeah. So yeah, self-love, following your heart's joys, paying attention to energies and how they affect you, and how to ask for help and what you can do in your own way to ground yourself. That also brings you joy because they do. Things I want to do to ground myself going to bring me so much joy. Okay. And gentle integration or gentle acceleration, gentle evolution. So to me, how it has occurred and continues to occur is quite perfect for me, quite beautiful for me. So much more expansion in feelings and understandings, but loving feelings, grateful feelings, understanding feelings. So I love it. When I do ask for acceleration again, I let you guys know I ask for acceleration, but in a way that's safe for me or joyful for me or loving for me or in a way that I can enjoy, in a way that doesn't overwhelm me. So I always put like a caveat like that in terms of acceleration. I have experienced some acceleration in terms of what they were showing me that I needed to heal or clear to progress in the journey, and it did not feel overwhelming. It did feel like I was getting the information more consistently and more rapidly. So instead of finding out what I needed to heal, like one thing per week, what was happening was I was having multiple dreams per week showing me different things that I needed to um work on, different things I needed to clear or bring into awareness. I think what how it works for me, and this is not for anybody, but it's kind of like also what we're going to talk about when we read the book and we conclude the book, is just like with the sacred union with a human, with another human being, what's important is to bring into awareness what the issue is, what the block is, the dross. It has to come to awareness. This thing that we're burning off, that's how it's burned off. It's come into awareness. It doesn't mean you have to find a solution for it. As we'll find out, you just have to bring it into awareness, and just that alone helps to begin the healing journey. So I think this sacred union with myself, what it is, it's bringing things that I didn't know or if I knew it wasn't in awareness fully, bringing it to my attention for me to be aware of, to know, to love, to accept, to understand, and that the healing process begins. I don't really understand how the healing process exactly works, how it's cleared, but it does feel like once I am aware of it and I acknowledge it and I understand and I love myself still through it, and I accept it, and for some reason it feels like it's been cleared. Now it may come back again from a different perspective, a different way to heal it, a deeper way, a deeper understanding of it. That happens as well too. But so bringing it into awareness seems to be the same kind of pattern, sacred union with your sacred partner, as is the sacred union with yourself. So that, and then also just wanted to say like the thing that I had learned from the Monroe Institute about the levels of consciousness and then the levels of human consciousness also was pretty informative for me. I am aware that that information that was communicated is being communicated from a being in their own progression, and it's just from their point of view. So it may not be the full view, but it's a more expanded view than I had before. So it helps to better understand what's literally going on. So that helped me. It doesn't mean that that's the complete truth of it, or that as someone or another being from a different aspect, a higher perspective may not say, they may say, well, no, it's not actually 7 levels of consciousness or dimensions. It's actually like infinite. I don't know. But the 7 and the explaining of the 7 helped me to kind of understand where I was in my process, and also how to progress, right? Through love and healing, love and healing, love and healing, which is kind of cool. And also explaining the third level of human consciousness, the power aspect and how that works, and just seeing where different people are in different aspects of their own evolution. And the levels can't be skipped. You do have to understand each level and having grace for that, because they're on their own learning in order to get to the next step. Like, yeah, having grace for that. You don't want to skip steps. So I can't say to someone, you're a terrible human being because you're doing such and such. Right? Whereas before there was good and evil, now it's just lessons and learning the different stages so you can get to a more expanded view on it. So yeah, so that's, I want this to be so short and simple. It seemed like it took so long. So let's go over the points again. The journey for me has been loving yourself, honoring my feelings, my emotions, my thoughts, my body, right? Following my heart's joys, gentle integration, dealing with the energies that we're getting, like the solar energies, and how to ground or integrate them in a way that's best for you, and also joyful for you. The levels of consciousness and figuring out where I am in my own consciousness journey, my own evolution, and having grace for others, asking for acceleration of the evolutionary journey. Sorry, guys. Also making sure that I say that in a manner that's safe for me, that's joyful, fun for me, that's loving for me, that's gentle for me, that does not overwhelm me. The sacred union with, as this book talks about, with your sacred divine partner, kind of has similar aspects of your sacred union with yourself, or your divine aspects, and just bringing into awareness what needs to be loved. So yeah, that's 7 things that I have learned so far on the journey, and how beautiful the journey has been and continues to be. It's not all, I want to say, not always easy. But when it's not easy, it's just because I am looking at past experiences and struggling to see that the experiences forward can be other than what past experiences are, and working through that expectation. So that's not easy to do. It's a whole different way of thinking, a whole different way of feeling loved and in connection with the world around you. And so it's not an easy turnaround always. But it's not horrible either. And the progress when dealing with what that is, those feelings, and recognizing that, finding truths in them, and parts of your belief system that has you in this frame of mind, is like gold, because then you can start to work on changing that belief system. So it's not always easy, but for me, I think it's been worth it, and quite beautiful to experience. So that's what I have to say today on what I've learned about the journeys. Also, yeah, I'm gonna stop there. So we're gonna continue the reading of Judy Judy Sion's story, which I think is a beautiful story, a real story, a vulnerable story. So let's see, where did I stop last time? Okay, so the last thing I talked about in the last episode was the Christmas tree and her being upset with the children's father because he didn't send the Christmas decorations and stuff. I'm trying to find it. I feel like I read this whole page. Yeah, I read this. Okay. When she's talking about this man that she met, that looked good, but some of them they look good, but you just don't know what's underneath there. Okay, so I'm gonna start where I met a man at a speaking engagement who claimed to be something he wasn't. But I believed him because I wanted him to be what he said he was, because I wanted the world to have such possibility. I wanted me to have such possibility. He portrayed himself as a great teacher and he played guitar and he sang songs. He told me he was Native American, a medicine man who had studied with the great old grandfathers and grandmothers. He performed ceremony and played the flute and wrote songs. He carried a sacred pipe and conjured images deeply held within my psyche. And so began my years with the eagle, the bear, spider, raven, and the white owl and the black fish. I hiked deeper into the forest and spent probably 2 nights of every week carrying the stones into the sweat lodge, praying and singing. The first 2 years we traveled with elders, and I really did learn some amazing things. What I didn't know was that he was learning right along with me. He really hadn't known many of these things before we came together, but then I had never experienced a real con man until him. And it took me years to figure that out. I did not know how cleverly the dark could pretend to be light. I have found, though, that as your journey grows and your knowledge of self grows, your discernment grows too. You can pick up on pretense a little bit better. But I think she's early in her journey still, that's why. Slowly, he began a process of tearing me down, demeaning me, cutting me off from old friends, and taking my power over a period of almost 5 years, until one day I awoke to realize I had become an abused woman. I had allowed a man to hit me while I supported him. One day I was walking behind him on the way to the kitchen to make him a cup of coffee. All of a sudden, he swirled around and pounded a blow to my left ear. Pain so sharp it numbed, shot through me, and I fell to the ground from the blow. I spent the rest of the day in bed holding my ear, curled in a fetal position from the pain. I was deaf in that ear for 6 months, and I told no one. He never said he was sorry. We just went on with life, and after all, he was a great teacher, and I was just a woman. What else am I left to think about my desperation for me to allow such treatment? Perhaps because abuse was infrequent and came literally out of the blue, I excused it. Perhaps I was too ashamed to admit it happened. Perhaps my childhood wound reopened. I was in the 5th grade. Right after lunch one spring day, Charlotte, the teacher's pet, saw a book lying on the teacher's desk. Charlotte was the room librarian, and so it was her domain to check all library books found in the room. Alas, it had not been checked out at all, Ever vigilant, Charlotte promptly returned the book to the library and came back to the classroom. The bell rang and the teacher walked in, took a look at her desk, and asked where her book was. The room got really quiet. Mrs. Brown was especially mean to some kids and particularly nice to others. There was never a reason anyone could determine what explained her behavior or her choice of victim. On that particular day, Mrs. Brown walked across the room and stood in front of me. Judy, you took my book back to the library, didn't you? No, ma'am, Mrs. Brown, I said respectfully, to which she threw her arm back and slapped me across the face, propelling me out of my desk and onto the floor. I was stunned and humiliated. I had done nothing. I couldn't wait to tell Ruby what had happened. She would take care of me. Mothers always take care of things. When I told her what happened, Ruby said, I'm sure she had a reason. I have to teach the same school. There's nothing I can do. I have to teach at the same school. There's nothing I can do. I never forgot her response and lived out the repercussions for another 30 years. If someone hits me, I must have done something to deserve it. If I was raped at knife point, it must have been because I had no business walking along that road that late at night. Before I finally learned my lesson, he attacked my daughter and wound up stealing everything we had accumulated between us. In the very end, he almost killed me, holding me against glass panel doors and beating me back and forth across the face until I almost lost consciousness. The truth was finally clear to me. I had fought a 5-year-long battle with the dark side of the soul of a man and lost. We agreed to separate after the girls and I returned from studying with an herbalist. Instead, while we were out of town, he wrote obscenities on the bedroom walls with magic markers, packed everything and left. He forged my name on documents that resulted in lawsuits and cleaned out the bank account. I learned the hard lesson of a male tyrant. We all have those lessons sometimes. We returned home and found everything gone, everything. I should say of value. He had taken the girls' new video player, bought with their child support, all CDs, all my art, my sacred bundle, all the furniture of any value, all running vehicles, including a motorhome in both our names, all paperwork, even my address book. He left behind 1,500 pounds of wet insulation and trash everywhere. There were threads hidden inside jars and hatbands and a notice from the landlord that we had less than 30 days to be out of the house. The girls and I cleaned the house, sealed the walls he'd covered with obscenities, repainted, and moved within that deadline. I know how much the insulation and garbage weighed because when we shoveled it off the rental truck at the dump, they charged me $180. When I looked shocked at the cost, he said, hey lady, you just offloaded 15 pounds of trash, and that's what it costs. Without a penny to my name, that was a huge sum to be charged for dumping his trash. But insult to injury had become a way of life with him. He also deserted the 2 dogs he had brought into my life. I put everything left into storage, kept out one good-looking outfit, and took the only living space offered us, a friend's tiny motorhome. We boarded the dogs at the kennel and put 3 cats into cages stacked on each other and moved all of us into a space only big enough to sleep in alongside the cat cages. I borrowed money from Adrian, who had saved every penny she'd ever been given, perhaps just so she could loan me that money, and I went to town looking for a house. A rental agent who had clearly lost her mind rented me an expensive old waterfront farmhouse on 6 acres of the most beautiful land on the island. I was a woman with no job and 2 teenage children. To this day, I have no idea how I got that farmhouse, nor do I have any idea how I had the courage to rent it. We moved in slowly and invited the owners to leave their old furniture in place rather than take it to the dump. There is a goddess. Thankfully, they gave us beds, a sofa from the 50s, and a dining room table. I slowly lifted my head from the paralyzing decay of shame and began to contact old friends, obtaining phone numbers one by one. I immediately discovered why he had stolen my address book. He had called many of them and told them I had stolen everything from him and left him with nothing. He told them I had taken all the money. He even told some of them that I had abused him. But here's the biggest shocker of all. Many of them believed him. He told them the most amazing lies I have ever heard. I had forgotten what a consummate liar he was. He had, after all, fooled me for years, and I had hidden the abuse from almost everyone for years. I didn't know why. It was infrequent, so I justified it. I kept thinking I'd done something wrong to make him hit me. It came so out of the blue, it was hard to believe it had happened. This was to be my first major encounter with betrayal, and I watched many people I called friends choose to believe him instead of me. Until that experience with him, I had always believed that there were two sides to every story. Now I know better. By that, I mean that I understand that there are always two experiences, and in the grand metaphysical understanding, everyone has their own truth. But there is no mitigation for abuse, verbal or physical. There is no other side that excuses abuse. She had lived near us and had seen his hypocrisy. She was also one of a handful of people who knew that I had stood by this man through his immense legal problems, paying for his lawyers with the profits from my own books to clean up his past shady history. She told me about a telephone conversation she'd had with his mother during the months of legal battles. Oh, I missed a portion there. The final shock for me was when a girlfriend visited me one day shortly after we got a new house. She was one of the few people who knew about the abuse. She had lived near us and had seen his hypocrisy. She was also one of a handful of people who knew that I had stood by this man through his immense legal problems, paying for his lawyers with the profits from my own books to clean up his past shady history. She told me about a telephone conversation she'd had with his mother during the months of legal battles. He had always claimed to be a metis, a person of mixed blood, part native and part Caucasian. So this woman had asked his mother which side of the family had the native blood. His mother had replied there was absolutely no native blood on any side, only Italian. She had confirmed that he was actually full-blooded Italian. In actuality, he was nothing he had claimed to be, and until the very end, I had believed him. I had believed his version of the legal battles, which portrayed him as a victim of the system. I had believed his version of why I found different names on paperwork. I had believed his version of how awful all the other women had been in his life, betraying him and deserting him and leaving him with nothing. And I swore I'd stand by him and show him how wonderful some woman can be. I had believed his version of where he learned and earned his medicine. And in the end, I was to discover that he was not native, not even part native. Not only was he not what he said he was, but he wasn't even who he said he was either. I had wondered why he had different names, why he had a different name from his mother, and why his own daughter had a different last name, and why the name I knew him by was different from either his birth name or his daughter's name. He had been many different men in his life. There is a dreadful shame that comes with being a victim. whether it is of abuse or ignorance or both, as in my case, it is rather like being a rape victim. There is a terrible sense that you did something to bring it on, some horrible, awful feeling that somehow you deserved it. In my case, this was, of course, the result of my childhood with Queen Victoria, who had somehow always made me feel like I was very lucky. She hadn't left me in a dung heap somewhere to starve when she took me in as a baby. And the ideal matter, the ideal mating of terror is when a natural abuser meets a victim of childhood trauma. In that sense, we were made for each other. And if you understand the perfection of imperfection, we both got what we chose to deserve. As harsh and awful as that sounds. As long as we allow it, we will be beaten. And when we value freedom above everything and anything else, we will choose freedom, even when it means the loss of what happens to be everything. Even if it means the loss of what appears to be everything. The reason he fled when he did is because, in my growing suspicions of many things, I had begun to call him on his hypocrisy more and more loudly, risking everything in doing so. And I threatened to let people know who he was and who he really wasn't. Had I stayed subservient and obeying, he would still be dominating my life. In the midst of escape from terror, I drew a friend to my cause. A remarkable and wonderful man literally flew to me and helped me through this crisis. He brought his White House to America from abroad. He told me there was nothing I could ever do that would make him leave, that no matter how hard I tried to push him away, he was there to stay. I finally yielded to his pleadings, and I let down my long hair over the castle wall. He was the antithesis of every man I had ever known. He was grounded both in his business life and in his spiritual life, and he adored me. He listened intently to my feelings, valued my opinion on all matters, and he loved to touch and be touched. He held his hand over mine one day at a cafe in Santa Fe, took off his favorite ring, which he wore everywhere, and said, "The next ring that will go on this finger is the ring that you put there. The same day I put one on your finger. It will be the ring that binds us forever." It was a moment from a movie, and I melted. Was I finally safe enough to trust again? I let my hair down further over the castle wall. Slowly, basking in his love and his commitment, I began to relax. He helped me unravel the messes constraining me. He defended me. I don't think anyone had ever defended me before. We began a new business together. He adored the girls, and for the first time in their life, they had a loving, generous father. He gave Jennifer money for guitar lessons, something I'd never been able to offer her. And he bought Adrienne her own flight headset so she wouldn't have to borrow one when she went flying. He noticed little things and acted on them. He even drove to Jennifer's college to check out her potential housemates, lovingly interrogating them, qualifying them, to make sure she would be safe in that environment, asking them all sorts of silly questions only a loving father would ask. She glowed in the attention. We all did. Love and appreciation are beyond measure. There's no yardstick long enough to measure its importance, no scale that can weigh its immense value. I began to heal. And so when Christmas rolled around, I was determined to find the most special present I could, to thank him for choosing to be the amazing being he had chosen to be. I had wanted to give him something beyond a thing in a box, something beyond measure. I wanted to find something to bespeak my awed and humble gratefulness for him. And that is how I met Tom Kenyon. A little voice in my head said to me, "You must find the tones, give him the sounds for Christmas." What on earth did that mean? I called all my friends who sing professionally to ask them to sing for him for Christmas, but they were all on tour or unavailable. Then one night, a girlfriend called and mentioned Tom Kenny's name during the conversation. My heart jumped and bells went off in my head, which doesn't happen often for me. For years, people had told me how amazing Tom Kenyon's work was, and many had said we should meet. I had actually gone home several times during my medicine days with his phone number suggesting a meeting only for the great medicine man to snarl a refusal. Later, I found out why. Now, I was with a supportive, loving person, and I could meet whomever I felt called to meet. The words in my head, the ones without a voice, were whirling and clanging and striking chords of recognition, telling me to act. This was the Christmas present I had been looking for. I took Tom's phone number and called his office and actually left a message that embarrasses me to this day. I recall saying something like, I know you don't know me, but for years people have said we should meet. I don't know if they have said the same to you. But anyway, I need to find the most spectacular present for a very special man, and I wonder if you'd consider being the Christmas present. He called a few minutes later and we scheduled a present delivery at his home up near the Canadian border. We drove up 2 days later to take delivery of the present. I didn't even know what Tom Kenyon did. I had no idea he worked with tones. I was just listening to my guidance, something I had avoided doing for years. We were met at the door by the largest animal I have ever seen in a house. His name was Merlin. He barely had to raise his head to look me in the eye, scanning me from head to toe. His head easily reached my chest. He was larger than a miniature horse, part bloodhound, part Great Dane. Merlin ushered us in, and Tom met us shortly thereafter. Tom settled us on a sofa and unwrapped a crystal bowl and began to call in the archangels. I had closed my eyes, but when he began to sing, they popped open. I had to see to believe what I was hearing. This music of the spheres couldn't come from the human being sitting 4 feet away from any human being. This was the voice of God. This was like no other voice I've ever heard in CD, in a concert hall, anywhere. Even in my dreams, no one could sound like that. Tears poured out my eyes and my body began to tremble. I have never known such gratitude. I was grateful that a voice like this actually existed on earth and that I was lucky enough to be able to be in the same room with it. Such voices were locked away in cloistered palaces and hidden within opera halls and protected by guards and security. No one gets close to anyone with a voice like this, and there I was. I slid further away on the sofa, not wanting to take these stones away from my friend. This was a gift for him. It was not for me. I was very grateful to be in the room. After Tom called in the archangels, he began a process of taking my friend into the eye of the ibis, through it and into another dimension, all through tone and sound. Sometimes he was an eagle, sometimes he was a whale, and it was all coming out of Tom Kenyon. We were both profoundly altered. Then the Hathors came through and spoke to my friend as if they were old friends. When they finished their sounds and their information and directions given through Tom, Tom himself returned for a moment to announce, "The Hathor goddess wishes to speak to you, Judy." I was dumbfounded. I hadn't expected any attention. This was my present for Tom, for someone else. I sat up straighter, feeling the intensity entering the room. I have no memory of what she said to me, nor does anyone else who was in the room. Someday the occasion will arise for me to ask her, but I know it was deeply honoring and very loving and intensely personal, so personal that none of us can remember it. I know she made reference to my recent battle with the dark and congratulated me for still being alive. When we left, Tom caught me on the way out of the door and said, "I have to tell you, I don't do this." "What don't you do?" I asked. I don't see people privately in my house, he said matter-of-factly. Then why did you let us come today? It seemed to be a legitimate question. The half-host told me to let you come. He closed the door and left me standing there feeling very strange and elated. I knew the Hathors are interdimensional beings who had been very active and beneficial in ancient Egypt, masters of sound and love, but I had never had an experience with them before. Back at home on my little island, I was a haunted person. I couldn't get those sounds out of my head. I had this feeling there was a connection, a deep connection somewhere. My friend had never been so affected by anything in his life, and I was very proud of myself for creating the most amazing Christmas present anyone ever received, and the sense of connection grew inside me. I was haunted by Tom Kenyon's comment. The Hathors told me to let you come. So about a week later, I called again. If the Hathors told you to let us come once, would they tell you to let us come again? He laughed and said he was sure they would. And so another session was set and we went back once more. During the session, I was given information about our Egyptian connections. And at the end of the session, it was clear that old friends had found each other again. I even understood why my former partner had scolded and refused to ever meet Tom Kenyon. I had been shown how I had watertight rope dangling above such a pit of darkness intent on destroying me, that one tiny step to one side or another would have easily cost me my life. I may not appear very logical in this very abbreviated version of my life, and perhaps I have not written the accounts of my logic, but I am a devout realist. I am logical almost to a fault, and I am loyal clearly to a fault, and was once very Pollyanna-ish, a trait I was quickly getting over now. I am a deductive reasoner. My greatest teacher, the friend in the wind, always used to say, Master, reason it out. I love that he called us master rather than demanding we approach him from a position of devotional enslavement. He always said that we would never understand that we are God if we kept calling something outside ourselves master. I began to realize that the darkness isn't dumb enough to obviously look dark. It often looks like the light, and discernment can be quite difficult. Discernment. So there's a difference between judgment and discernment, and we learn discernment as we get more acquainted with ourselves. Okay, guys? And when I thought about it, it made sense. If there was such a creature as the devil, where would he hide if he was smart? He'd hide in the church or some permutation thereof. He'd hide in the spirituality. And although I had long ago figured out that it was the devil himself, so to speak, at the helm of the Church of Rome and many governments, I had not looked within my own rank, within what I considered the truly sacred realms of alternative spirituality, where I was convinced the hope of the world truly lay. And it was then that I realized that darkness was not dumb, just evil. The darkness would, of course, attempt to permeate and use our own language to defeat our awareness in this attempt to subdue world consciousness. Darkness, the evil of enslavement, can no longer stop us from raising our consciousness through the ignorance of sin and guilt. So it has figured out how to creep undetected into our midst and stand alongside us, pretending to be one of us, luring us into confusion, beating us back once again from individual Christ consciousness. Perhaps I should clarify what I consider evil. By the word evil, I refer to anything that thwarts the coming forward to Christ consciousness into the earth plane, anything that deters enlightenment. My friend sat up all night that night watching me. I went to sleep with him sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at me, tears streaming down his cheek. I asked him why he was crying, and he said he had no idea how close he'd come to losing me, and it broke his heart to imagine me so threatened. I woke to find him still sitting there. He swore that as long as he could help it, I would never be at risk again. I'm going to stop there today, and then next episode we start the new little part there. I like this part of the book. Anyways, guys, so that's it for today. I hope you have a great day, that you take time with yourself, that you know you are loved and you are loved, and you go along your gentle exploration of yourself with love and peace, understanding, and forgiveness, that you're able to accept yourself and love, even the parts of yourself you think don't deserve to be loved. It does. That's the only way to transmute it and to learn to love others that are probably that aspect of their own self too. Anyways, guys, have a great day, and we will follow up next podcast. Bye.